it's also part of what Mustafa just also he alluded to that. Bush as well did when they're talking about these needs that are very urgent for infrastructure, for integration at the regional level, where many of the opportunities to build blocks in the further integration into global economies really lie. So I'll just like to highlight that as one of the, I think, one of the innovations that I hear coming out of the panel. Now the question there, which is also very interesting, and I think it was mentioned by all of them, I think it obviously comes out in some of the remarks that we heard from the minister from Zambia as well, when he's talking about landlocked countries and the challenges. The question there is how and with what mechanisms, how to give priority from the international perspective to support those agendas of LDC regional integration. So that not all goes into this global integration as we call the black box, but very specifically to where the immediate constraints and the immediate opportunities are. And I think, again, I'd like to rescue that idea from the whole panel because I thought it was very strong. I said that I would give, again, an opportunity to come back with some reflections because we have him sort of last minute to our good minister from Zambia. So I'd like to do that and deliver on that promise. I'd like to take a few minutes to make some other remarks.
Thank you, Chair. Well, obviously, we cannot change our physical position. That's the biggest problem that we have. And what we have started in my region is forming these regional trading blocks. We have SADC, and we have, I think, about 2 others. But it's still not working out well. I think my brother from Tanzania, he certainly brought up a very, very important point, which is the reciprocity that we receive from those that have got access to ports and things like that. So, but this is really, I think, an internal matter between Zambia and those that surround us who've got ports. We would like to engage them and would like assistance from the outside world to see as to how the world shouldn't be subsidized, but how we can just be assisted in overcoming that particular issue, which we physically cannot change, but we do need to be assisted. I don't know how, but my brother from Tanzania mentioned something that was of particular interest to me. So at times the behavior of those that have got easy access, tends to be friendly, and they can just slap you with a bill of any amount, because knowing that you have no choice. You need the goods, you need the fertilizer to come into your country, and they're saying the fertilizer now has got $3 per ton more. So what do you do? So I think I shall ask, through you, Chair, panel to assist in getting us some answers. And my president is very, very keen, he's waiting. He just got an SMS message, he's waiting to hear how we can be assisted. For we are physically landlocked. And we are not averse to attacking neighbors, taking territory, whatever. In actual fact, our neighbors run to our country. Zambia, there are lots of refugees in Zambia from other countries.
Thank you again, Mr. Gude. Again, I think that those are very interesting issues. I remember that they had a program on landlocked countries for a number of years. I don't know what has happened with that, but it's obvious that there are issues that are that come, well, they encompass not only the financial support, the need to set up the platforms for political dialogue and so on, but also the rules, as Paul said before. I mean, the Article 5 has to sort of to be updated so that it is fit for turn the floor to the audience just for a few minutes and see if there's anybody. The mic is on. Yeah, please.
Thank you. Now, I think we have to. Trade is very important, of course, but this issue of aid for trade bothers me a bit. I mean, it's basically aid for productive capacities, right? Why do we say this aid for trade? I think it reflects a little bit the export fetishism that a lot of people have. So I think I have to make that comment because it's basically what we're interested in is basically aid for productive capacities. And why focus only on trade? I think in practice it is not being done. I think the way it is defined nowadays, it is not that narrow. But I think it should be acknowledged that aid for improving productive capacities, aid for investment, is as important as, for producing for domestic markets, is as important as for producing exports. So I think that's one thing which I have to put forward. Now, about transport. It is extremely important, of course, the transport costs. And there, I would like to make a couple of suggestions. I think one of the things that, back in the graduate school, I made a suggestion that was way back in history. I said SDR should be allocated according to need. And the professor said, what do you mean? That don't be crazy. That's, but no, it does become something that everybody talks about. So it wasn't so crazy. This was back in the 1970s. Now, the transport costs, one of the suggestions that I've been making around is why don't we give aid to landlocked LDCs in order to cover the cost of going from the home country, from the border of the country to the port. Just give that as aid. Why not? That I think is part of the. It's one of the things that I think we can look at ODA. And I was to follow up from what I was saying before. We have to monitor ODA, but we have to depackage ODA and see where ODA goes. And that type of ODA is something that might be useful. Another crazy idea that I had actually on this links with the markets. I always make a distinction between market entry and market access. Market access is there, but you cannot enter the markets. And these are not only NTBs, because NTBs are rules. There are things which are not rules. And the way that you have to pay in order to put your products on the supermarket shelves. Another crazy idea was, why don't we provide ODA to develop into LDC exporters so to pay to put their products on the supermarkets. They have to pay. It costs rich people, rich countries can. Firms of rich countries can, but firms of poor countries cannot. I think that's another thing that I think one might talk about. And about the experience of Zambia, I think the selling of ZCCM, for instance, the mining company, was a very important issue. And that also talks about, gives lots of ideas about assistance, support in negotiating with the private sector, with big mining companies, for instance. That again is something which is very difficult to monitor, but I think it should be part. There comes the question: who provides the assistance? And one bad example of that is again the agriculture, because their assistance is provided by the people who are selling the product, the seeds. Assistance provided by the companies who sell the insecticides, the pesticides, and the assistance that they provide is not, I think, impartial. So I don't want to belabor, but I think these are issues that come out which can be part of the implementation of the program.
Thank you. To your next program.
All the things the former minister from Zambia he has already pointed out. The challenge is this: how LDCs are going to manage these new resources that are coming into. And in this connection, one issue is the accessing geological information. Now, if LDCs are in a position to use the ODA, there's the aid money, to access the geographical information, then the governments will have better capacity in negotiating with the foreign firms. But the way the whole pre-Istanbul negotiation and discussion have taken place, we haven't seen much discussion on this. So this is one of the issues that the LDC policymakers need to pursue, whether they can take advantage of the ODA, then get the geological information, and thereby enter into a negotiation with the foreign firms. So that's one thing. And then the issue of how we are going to deal with the disputes. Although I know about one case from Bangladesh, it's not a very natural resource rich country, but here Bangladesh had to suffer a lot when those disputes arose with regard to many of the multinational companies. So that is something that they should take into consideration. And in mitigating these disputes, we need to think about what role the WTO is going to play, whether that can be done under the WTO, while many of the LDCs have got I would say more powerful powers. Now, then, once the investment has gone into that particular sector, the natural resource sector, then the issue of the managing tax disease, that is another thing. And where from the money is coming, how we are going to address is that's there. The issue of productivity, I think, is going to be critically important because many of the LDCs are now trying to break into manufacturing. And there, the issue of productivity is important. But let's put that into context. For example, for LDCs, what they can do. LDCs, if they are not producing natural resources, perhaps the only other item they can export to, that is basically will be highly, actually unskilled, labor-intensive products. And here the problem is, in most of the unskilled products, the share of wages in total value added of that particular product is really, really low. For example, consider one particular shard exported by Nepal, Cambodia, Bangladesh, or Lesotho. There the share of labor in total value added is about 5%. Now suppose overnight we increase the labor productivity by 100%. So essentially that shard cost will come down from $100 to $97.5. Will that give LDCs enough margin to better compete with countries like China and India? No. So what are the other implications? The next implication is the way we consider the whole idea of having our urbanization process. Because there were now estimates that shows that when the city grows, the productivity also increases. It comes with a lot of challenges, but it comes with productivity advantage. Just to give you one example, it has been estimated that if we could increase the city size, say, if we can double the city size, then the productivity increase will be by about 6%. That may not sound much, but consider this case: a city with a worker of 100,000, and compared with a city of with a worker of 3 million. Maybe could be Lusaka or Lesotho versus Dhaka. And by moving from that particular city, your productivity gains is going to be 30%. Now with that 30%, and add other trade preferences that LDCs have, probably will have the margin. Now the main problems with the LDCs that are landlocked, like how they are going to take advantage of this. Professor Arda has mentioned about the issue of providing aid for mitigating those increased costs. But actually the problem is it's not only about mitigating the cost, because these days the time is also an important factor. How fast we are going to supply to the market, to New York, to London. And in that regard as well, if the infrastructure in Zambia, it's not Zambia's problem alone, it's also the problem of other neighboring countries. And that will also cause delays to Zambia's supplying to markets in London, New York, or other places. So I think, Mr. Chairman, the whole issue is, we need to think a bit, beyond the boxes and bring everything together, and then perhaps we will be able to recommend policy options more concretely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very good